Hello and good morning. Well, to be fair, I would normally have been at work for an hour and a half, hour and 15. Welcome, I'm Druidsfire, and I have the news for you. I also have a cat. He says hi. He's mad because he hasn't had his breakfast yet. You poor cat. Come on, get back here. Anyhow, I've got the news for you. So if you were in my personal Discord, you can see pretty much the notes of the things that we're going to discuss today. So Standing Stone went to Devcom. They're still there. They just recently concluded, like in the past 15 minutes, a panel called The Joys and Challenges of Bringing Middle-earth to Life in a Persistent World. Now, for those who don't know what Devcom actually is, it is a developer professional conference. It is a paid event, business paid, as opposed to fans paying to go to, say, Gamescom, which is later this week. While Thief howls in the background, I do apologize for my cat. So, of the team there, let's actually go. I have slides. I made slides, chat. This is amazing. So, we have our panelist of the day. If XSplit's going to switch, there we go. Our panelist of the day was moderated by Cordovan, Master Jerry Snook, the community manager of Lord of the Rings Online. Also with him on stage was Chris Pearson, the lead world builder, way too cool for school, and a cool dev name. Ryan Pank, aka Pinion, game designer number 2, which means he's got some seniority there. He also probably designed most of your favorite raids. Michelle Reed, also known on the forums as Capture Call, she is the associate brand manager. She was actually there, but she wasn't on stage. So I think she was behind the scenes making sure that nobody said anything bad. But she's awesome, by the way. Marcy Brown was on stage. She is the senior localization coordinator for Standing Stone. She is the one who handles, basically the game's localization. And there were things that were discussed during the panel that reflected that as well. Also on stage was Sarah Libby. They are the office manager, copy editor, QA, also HR, and person of many hats. At Standing Stone. So I'm going to go over my notes and we're going to talk about what's going on. And I've got some screenshots I will be sharing with you. But first I wanted to bring up what the Devcom information blurb was on the website. It says, From the crumbling, shadowed ruins of Weathertop to the ageless golden wood of Lothlorien, The Lord of the Rings Online has immersed players in the beloved world of Middle-earth for 15 years. In this panel, the team from Standing Stone Games will discuss the challenges and learnings of developing and maintaining the fantasy world of J.R. Tolkien in an MMO space. So basically, as you can see from their title, they were talking about the joys and the challenges. So they would post up some graphics on the screen showing some of the joys, some of the challenges, showing some really cool screenshots from the game to illustrate their points. So, let me go to Twitch and see what chat's going on. Sam Burke in the chat, happy belated birthday to you, sir. And, yeah, Bookworm, hi, how you doing? Yeah, Thief is the anti-professional here. Alrighty. And they also posted some takeaways, and these again for fellow game developers and folks looking to, network with them about, this is the business side of things. And so we have, they were talking about licensor relationships, working within strict IP guidelines, development in a persistent world, story and narrative, modernizing content. They didn't really talk about that too much, which is kind of sad. And the importance of lore keepers, because that is a big deal. So let's show a screenshot of what did it actually look like at Devcom. So Devcom, it was primarily an in-person event. There were literally only like a couple other people watching the live stream with me, which is great, which means I got to ask a question directly to the team. And I'm going to tell Jerry later that yes, that was actually the question he answered on stage. But we do have some big news to talk about. But this is actually what it looked like. Discord broke out the blazer, right? So on stage, left to right, Sarah Libby, Ryan Pank, Chris Pearson, Marcy Brown, and then Jerry Snook. So, anyhow, this was their thing. Very nice, well shot. Audio was a little bit fuzzy, especially when Chris Pearson started to get really animated and started talking about some cool stuff. His audio started breaking up. So, all right. So there were 114 people were registered attendees, and I believe the vast majority of them were actually in the room. I did actually like how Devcom presents things. So you have an app to sign into. There's a lot of networking things. This is a dev to dev presentation. So how the hell did I get there? Because anybody could have attended virtually if they were willing to spend money. I wasn't actually willing to spend money. I'm kind of glad I didn't. Because I actually watched some other panels this morning beforehand just to kind of make sure I didn't fall asleep. There were some really interesting ones, especially the one about video game music, which I need to make sure Bill Champagne watches if he can. However, this being a dev to dev thing, this is like a GDC, GDC? Yeah. Game Developer Conference sort of dealio. PAX Dev is another one. This is for developers to network amongst each other, students of game development and game design at university, trying to, make some connections, maybe get their foot in the work, in the door or whatnot. But there was also the ability to apply for press credentials. So that's how I managed to get into this. Is I applied for press credentials, and for some reason they said yes. So I didn't shell out the $100 for this because that was actually the cheapest version to get in. It was the virtual ticket. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that word. That might be trademarked by Blizzard Entertainment. I don't honestly care. The virtual option was 100 euros, 99 euros, which is basically 100 US dollars. So there was that. So that being said, I'm actually going to bring my Discord window over to this screen so I can actually read it and so also look at chat. So they did introductions. Chris Pearson's been around forever since the project started back in the Middle-earth online days. Opinion's been around a long time as well. I happen to know, just from his interview and setting up the interview with Professor Corey some time back, Opinion's first content on the game was the Great River Quest areas. So you can blame him for those. Sarah, they've been around since 2008. They do QA, some development work, copy editing, some HR work. Marcy has been around for some years as well. And they posted an infographic, and I didn't quite catch the entire thing. 7.4 million words in the game. Most of them probably written by Maid of Lions, Mr. Former Lawyer. One of the biggest explorable worlds in an MMO space. The overall map of the game they showed with a GIF showing exactly how the game expanded over time, and I actually do have an image of that. Let's take that one away and put that one in place. And so what they did is they actually showed it as like a small video where it started off with like this yellow splotch here and then this yellow splotch, and they just kind of loop down the screen. And so this is currently the playable area in the game. And as you can see, this is much like looking at the stable master map in game, where you can see how much more they have to do, right? So that's a thing. So Chris Pearson was telling the story of where their story started. In Eriador, in this upper corner of Eriador in Ered Luin, it started fairly small there. They wanted to tell more about including Eriador and the starting peoples like the Rangers, Hobbits. They had to figure out where the bad guys were going to be, referring to the Nazgul as being up on vacation in the north. Because, of course, you've got Eriador way up here, right? You got Mordor way the hell down here. So how do you get from up here to down here? And you don't want to just like front load that. You want that you need to tell that story over time, just like the books themselves, right? So basically, they had to figure out where the bad guys were going to be, And, he was looking at references. The Colonel started in Angmar, mentioning, vague mentions of Angmar in the trilogy, but there were more references to it in the appendices themselves, and that's kind of where they took that ball and started rolling it up the hill. And Marcy chimed in and said that, she said the Nazgul were super scary. Like, the first time you see them in game, they were like a big deal. And then, Chris Pearson jumps in and says, the Nazgul were kind of busy picking up their allies instead. And some of the challenges they mentioned, and I do actually have a screenshot of this, is, it's actually my next screenshot. Let's bloop that one out and bloop this one in. And, yeah, you kind of can't see the whole thing, but as you can kind of see... Let's try that again. Audio still good? Awesome. All right, let's try this again and see if I can break it once more. I need to move this window up. All right, let's turn that one off and turn this one on. Boop. So, challenges! Hooray! So this is one of the slides they posted, and while they were discussing this slide. So, developing the foundations of Middle-earth, adaptation and style, and expanding, and I assume the word is lore, because they were talking about lore. And one of the things that I find fascinating is Marcy, the localization lady, was talking about, she was speaking about how they use the references of the other things that they can't directly reference. Hi, Bright Life community, how you doing? How they use the naming of Middle-earth was something that Tolkien wrote about how names were supposed to work in the various languages in the various areas. Like, dwarves sound like this, this thing sounds like this other thing, and this is where it comes from. And so Standing Stone used it, well, Turbine back in the day, but then Standing Stone used that over time to inform how they built things and how the names came about, even if they couldn't directly reference them. And she was talking about how this works in terms of her localization work. And she was speaking about how names were translated for sense, such as Baggins deriving from Bagen. So, and she was illustrating by, saying what the names are in the French and the German clients. It's this thing in German, this thing in French. So then when she works with the translators, the names have to match the original meaning or reference, rather than just simply a transliteration. Pardon me. One thing Chris Pearson said, that Tolkien's art that was originally in the books was not licensed along with the books. So, as you can see in this image, you can see the original drawing that Tolkien did of the Holland Gate, and then you can see LotRO's version of the Holland Gate, and how you could see that it's not exactly the same, because it can't be. And so that's one of the things about the adaptation, and Pinion chimed in about how they couldn't directly quote the text, and they don't have textual rights. That's reserved by HarperCollins, and Standing Stone does not have those rights, so they can't directly quote things. And Sarah was speaking about one of the things in fairly more recent content, the Minas Morgul expansion, about how the Sons of Isildur had code names and why they had code names, which I thought was very fascinating in the gameplay, but it makes perfect logical sense in terms of the story. It's like, what story were they telling to justify why they weren't using the names from the books, but they weren't in the books they had the rights to use? They were mentioned in like the History of Middle-earth series, not in the trilogy, The Hobbit, or the appendices. And Chris Pearson actually reminded us about that those are the only 3 sources they are allowed to directly reference. Any other side content that Tolkien wrote, or any of the posthumous stuff coming out, even like the stuff that's in the Nature of Middle-earth recently published by Karl Hofstadter, not allowed to use, even if it's directly referencing or contradicting stuff that happens in the game. And Pinion, Ryan Pank, was discussing the thing that they have called region documents. I think that's what he called them. Region something. To explain the lore during the time the story takes place. So the world team, once they have this document to say, this is what happens in this space during this point in time in the books. Every last little single bit that they have that they can use as like a story Bible. And then the world team, such as Scenario and Orion, and even, I've later on in the thing, they'll talk about other people doing world building as well. World building, like physically making the game space that we play in. So the world team would start building the landscape based on those region documents, and then the content team works at the same time on the quest that'll happen in that area. And Pearson, unsurprisingly, noted that his region documents were massive tomes, right? Pearson is not going to write like a blurb. He's not going to do cliff notes here. The dude writes a lot. He collects everything Tolkien wrote and distills that down to the rest of the team so they can put their own spin on it and, figure out how they're going to adapt this without, violating the spirit of the lore. Including finding all of the cool breadcrumbs, the things that we as players get to find that sometimes get left off the table in other adaptations because they don't have this opportunity that the dev team here has. They then popped up a slide about joy. They were talking about creating a unique experience, and they showed a picture of Weathertop in the background. The evolution of smaller stories and characters with a picture of Bingo Boffin and Will and Whisker. And maintaining immersion, and there was a word that started with CO, but it was covered up by their webcam, so I'm not sure what that thing was all about. But however, Pearson was talking about the breadcrumbs such as how they flesh out characters such as Horn. And they, Pinion was chiming in about the story about Horn, and Pearson jumps in and says, he dies badly, which is always an exciting way to get players to care about them, which I find funny as hell. Another slide was about challenges, recreating momentous scenes, making players feel important in a sea of heroes, and giving voice to established characters. Honestly, it's one thing LotRO does so much better than many other games that are based on a pre-existing intellectual property. Sarah was talking about in oblique terms. She didn't mention the name specifically, but she was talking about Horn and the decision that Halros makes way back in a day that will affect what happens to Horn at the Battle of Pelennor. Because, of course, as we all know in the books, Horn is referenced as having died at the Pelennor in a line in the middle of a ton of other names. And so that was really interesting to talk about how Horn, the decision that the players made way back in the day affects whether Horn dies for real, somebody else dies, or Horn goes off to be with his lady love. Yes, I agree with you, Bookworm. They need to wrap up Horn and Nona's story. Oh, Nona's story. Well, I think part of the problem is it depends on what happened to Horn, right? So they would have to create two different versions of that story. And Marcy says that they wanted people to feel like they're actually in these areas, living in Middle Earth, that you're immersed in these pieces of history. And Penny was talking about how can they get players to touch these stories, to feel like they're part of the stories. And they want to ensure that players can interact with those big events if they can't be there. And he's talking about session play. Particularly the one he mentioned by name was the one involving Nafni and the Doran's Bane incident that we all know and love. And Cordovan says that they can also talk about the scale of the game and how it increased over time. Pinion was talking about the Rise of Isengard, which was the first expansion he worked on, and how they were experimenting with these distant battle figures, as I think was what he called it. If you all remember the first time you saw Wolf's Cleft, you'd be like, what the? We can't go down there. There's way too many bad guys down there. And as they got into Helm's Deep, they blended it with epic battles, and by the time they did the Pelennor, they created what he called War Walls, which is a set dressing of orcs and men fighting in the background, fleshing out the conflicts and making it feel like a real battle. And Marcy goes, it's not all battles. And then Joy slide. Creating and refining Middle-earth was one of the items. Blending whimsy with seriousness was another one. It was a picture of a hobbit looking over across some boats in a pond or a river. And going off the beaten path. And unsurprisingly here, the dev team loves Bingo Boffin. Pinion described him as a pseudo-epic story companion, and it was talking about how it rolled out as a weekly serial, open up a week by week for a year. So if you don't remember, if you weren't there when it happened, the Bingo Boffin story happened over the course of one entire year, 1 week one quest per week, that you followed along with the story of Bingo. Sarah Libby admits to naming Bingo. They were talking about speaking to the quest design, the person who designed the story, which we all know is Jeff Libby, Made of Lions, about how, so Sarah mentioned how they thought that it should be a nice homage to Frodo's original name. Frodo, if you didn't know, his original name in Tolkien's previous iterations of the books was called Bingo. Until Edith Tolkien convinced her husband that that's not a good name for a hero. Bingo is really amazing, Hoppa Joel, not gonna lie. And Chris Pearson laughed and said Bingo is an affable doofus. And so they were talking about how Tolkien had a lot of world-shaking content, but also had a lot of lighter stuff back, all over the place. And Chris Pearson referred to the first chapter of The Fellowship of the Rings as practically a comedy. So for them, the dev team, Bingo Boffin is a palate cleanser. And Marcy says it's a very Hobbit adventure experience. And so Cordovan asked the team, how do we keep the stakes high after the ring's destroyed? And Chris Pearson, being the inevitable smartass that he is, goes, it's all done! Can I go home now? And he started laughing. So they discussed how they created the Mordor experience the way that they did. They said that they had to do the ring drop first. Players could not go in until after the ring was destroyed because it wouldn't make any sense. It would have tripped, Sauron would have figured out what the hell's going on. He would have pointed the finger to Frodo. So they basically said, nope, players can't get in until after Sauron's defeated. And so they opened up the notion of a power vacuum, folks scrabbling for their piece of the pie afterwards. And so that's why they invented warlords such as Karazgar, Laerith, to make things more interesting. Because there's honestly, let's be honest here, there's no freaking way players should be able to take out Sauron. And of course, you didn't want them to, keep an eye, you didn't want him to notice that Frodo was skulking toward the big mountain. So another slide they presented was challenges of adding content to an established creative space, maintaining lore authenticity, and modernization. The last one they really didn't discuss, and I wish they would have because I asked a question about it. But Pinion was discussing how they created the Stout Axe race, about these dwarves who just happened to be in Mordor and enslaved by Sauron, why they were enslaved by Sauron, hello, dwarf ring, etc., and dragons and whatnot. And then talking about the past and mostly telling their story the way we players, they're talking about what we as players know, how the Stout Axes were created or how they came into the stories from the lore side. Because again, this presentation wasn't for us. It was for, why am I wearing headphones? I can't even hear anything. Don't have a game going. The presentation wasn't for us as players. It was for people in the audience who probably have never played LotRO before, other developers to see how these guys and ladies and others made this game. All right. So they then shifted to how they brought in the Gelruka, and how that brought in the whole notion of interdwarf politics. And they also talked about, the battle of Azanulbazar and how you brought back, they had all 7 houses of the dwarves and how the Cambrada turned into the Stout Axes. So this is the multi-year dwarf story arc reclaiming the Grey Mountains and ultimately Gundabad, according to Chris Pearson, and how they brought those other houses of dwarves in as much as they could. And of course, acknowledging that, there was some fleshing out of those houses in other Tolkien writings, but Standing Stone couldn't reference them. They can only kind of allude to them kind of a little bit. And then the conversation shifted a little bit, and Marcy was talking about how she loves playing Bjornings, and how the team brought Bjornings into the story. And Pinion was saying Bjornings are a distinctive type of character. Having them as a playable class is pretty cool. Can confirm. Problem with their story is that it tells you of being the only Bjorning set forth, but you're playing an MMO. You just kind of have to reconcile that. At some point, you're just going to say, screw it. There's a whole bunch of these other Bjornings around. We're just going to have to live with it. Another slide popped up of Joy's. They're talking about telling our stories. And there was a picture of Bilbo there from the Further Adventures of Bilbo Baggins. The community impact in shaping the world. And this is the part where I kind of went like this. Because the picture there was a band playing outside the Prancing Pony, and I could clearly tell it was the Lonely Mountain Band. My good friends, the Lonely Mountain Band. And having in-universe excuses to celebrate. And then Cordovan started talking about Weatherstock. And Sarah Libby jumps in and says, "We never intended for this to happen. We didn't market this. We didn't plan for this." And Chris Pearson said his first reaction to the notion of Weatherstock was, they want to do what? Weathertop wasn't built for this? Also can confirm, because one time I got to visit the studio, Vastin showed me what Weathertop looked like in their proprietary world builder, and there were things all over the place. So it's no wonder Weathertop always crashed the freaking zone. There's also a substantial, I guess a brief mention? Not substantial. There was a mention of housing and how players can bring pieces of Middle-earth to their own spaces. Wood with the resub! Thank you for 31 months! Thank you. Okay. So, once they realized players would do stuff like this, throw concerts on the middle of a freaking mountaintop someplace, have these things in housing, what they wanted to do, what pieces of the game they wanted to bring to their own homes. They started planning spaces based on what the players were engaging with. So, Pearson, of course, mentions that musicals themselves were being held, and that when he was helping design Minas Tirith, he told other members of the dev team not to build in two specific places, because no, those are theaters. So they were reserved, and that's why we have the Blue Theater and the other theater whose name I can never remember because nobody ever uses it. It's very sad. And at that point, Pearson is the one who built the Lore Hall. The Scholars Hall is in Bree. If you go to the door across the way from the Crazy Cat Lady's house, there's a door you go and there's the Lore Hall. That's where Professor Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor, my boss, goes and teaches Exploring Lord of the Rings fairly often on a Tuesday evening, going sentence by sentence over the books. And has done since January 3rd, 2017. So Chris Pearson made the Lore Hall for Corey because Corey reached out to him and said, "Yeah, I want to teach this class, going over the books. I need a space for it." It's also the fact that when Corey first started to teach the class, we had like 50, 100 people showing up, and it was kind of lagging out Bree. Good times. Okay, now here is, what do we got? We've got the third, we've got the fourth, no, we got the third one. Yeah, this is one of the other panels, one of the other slides they did, the slide of joys. So Bilbo, see my friends, the Lonely Mountain Band, and in-universe excuses to celebrate the wedding of Aragorn and Arwen. However, I was not expecting this. Cordovan pulled a Trixie. Cordovan says, okay, I'm here to announce the next expansion of Lord of the Rings Online. Before the Shadow. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so no timing information, nothing we weren't told about when, where, how, what. However, they did promise more information soon. So yeah. So this is going to be a mini expansion. Remember, they have been saying previously that it's going to be like the more along the lines of the War of Three Peaks in terms of size. They have, by the way, officially announced the mention of Swanfleet and Cardolan. So those beautiful maps that have been posted on Reddit and elsewhere can now be officially mentioned, bruited about, because it's no longer under, and the names are not under NDA, the maps, whatever. Go look them up on Reddit, Squirrel posted them, and they're there. So you can see this areas. This will include places like Tharbad, and the Grey Flood, and all sorts of cool places. Okay, so they did open the floor to questions after the big reveal. Before the Shadow. They did talk, Cord did mention this is going to encapsulate the new alternate level 1 through 30 leveling experience. So I would imagine these are low-level areas. He also did say that they are doing some endgame content in that mini expansion. There's going to be a new skirmish, and there's also going to be a new 6-person instance. Yes, it's not a raid. I get you. However, they are talking about adding more endgame stuff here in the future. But now is a good time in the story that kind of works best for them to tell this alternate path and to do a little bit of a breather. So yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed there isn't a full expansion this fall, but that means that they are working on the actual next expansion, which is kind of cool. Alright, so a question that I asked that they answered is, how do you navigate the waters between new players discovering you because of some other massive Tolkien production? And I was, of course, not referencing Rings of Power, but I was. But needing to remain separate due to licensing restrictions. And the other half he didn't actually answer was, how fine does that line come when it comes to acknowledging or incorporating something similar enough to keep them engaged? So Pinion said that they've had their own voice for a long time. Their longevity is due to the strength of their storytelling. And Chris Pearson says, if you miss the books, and you miss certain stuff not included in other adaptations, we got just the game for you. He said they get to put all the cool stuff like Erkenbrand in the game, or go to the Stone of Eric. And Marcy, before that, even said we didn't know how excited she was to meet Tom Bombadil, because nobody's ever included Tom Bombadil in most of their adaptations. And a question from the audience was, how do you work around this new thing with a need for more endgame content? And Cord did say that there will be endgame stuff in it as well. He reiterated the skirmish and instance. And another question from the audience, when the game first released, it was a subscription model. To what extent has the monetization changed the game design or lore? And the reply from the developers was not much. Rohan got bigger due to horses, not money. And Cordovan acknowledged that going free to play brought in a lot more players. Somebody else in the audience asked, what sort of questions would you have for Tolkien if you ever had a chance to meet him? Acknowledging, of course, that he's quite dead, and has been dead for almost as long as I've been alive. Chris Pearson replied that their goal was to try to stay as loyal as possible, bearing in mind that it's still a game, trying to be as true to the spirit as possible and avoid deviations. And the question that he would have for Tolkien would be, can I buy you a pint? And Marcy said that she would just like to sit and listen to him tell stories. At the end of the event, that was pretty much it since it was question answer time. Cordovan did mention there is a player meetup happening. You can find the details on the forums. You might have to look for it a little bit. And there's also, on their social media, they've been linking to it periodically. It'll be Thursday evening. I believe our good friends Little Redhead and her significant other B4 will be present as our, as fellow LotRO streamers, as well as Sky Manic from our German LotRO stream community. And I believe Fuhrhar, I totally mangled your name, is also going to be there. So there's going to be some players there. They're going to definitely, I imagine, pump the dev team for more answers. I hope so. And also, you all are lucky bastards because Cord, I already knew this because he told me, but now I know what it is. They are going to be giving out some t-shirts. They're going to have some t-shirts available, some swag available for players who can actually manage to make the dev meeting, or I'm sorry, the player meetup on Thursday. And they said that the t-shirt picture was kind of scary, and they had previously referenced this image as kind of scary. So I imagine it's going to be a LotRO before the shadow sort of logo. Maybe this image on a t-shirt, don't know. If you have one, take a picture, make me all jealous. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. I will be splicing the two videos together from when XSplit was a butthead and crashed. So it's all going to be one video. Once it gets posted, I'll post it to my YouTube channel. But that was the presentation. It was mostly stuff about what happened in the past, other than the news about the new mini expansion's name and the key art for it. So that was, honestly, it was more than I was expecting, because I wasn't expecting them to announce this at a dev event that was behind a paywall, quite frankly. So yeah, Bookworm, fewer. The last time they went to frickin' Germany was like 10 damn years ago or more. It was Sapiens was the community manager the last time they went to Germany. I think it was the only time they ever went to Germany. So that was it from Devcom. Again, it was pretty much dev to dev discussion of how they bring the world to be and answering a few questions. Some of it was stuff we already knew. Some of it was new. And of course, now we know what the new expansion is going to be called. Again, a mini expansion. Don't get your hopes up for oh my god, I have to pay $130 to get the whole 9 yards, because if they price it at that, even I will bitch about it. And I don't even pay for my expansions anymore. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed. So yeah, that's the news from the world of LotRO. I don't know if they're going to be answering any questions on social. I don't know how jet lagged they are. I think they were a little bit loopy on stage, but I hope that, because from my understanding, it's like a 12 or 13-hour flight to get from Boston to Germany, so I don't know. But they now have the rest of today, tomorrow, and Wednesday to chill. I imagine they'll probably attend other panels at Devcom, because, it's a professional conference, and they might as well. Why the hell not? It's before the shadow paid, VIP free. We don't know anything about it. I will bet you $5 though. It's going to be a paid expansion. They've been saying it's a mini expansion, just like War 3 Peaks. So I would say set your expectations for that in terms of pricing. And if they lowball us, then hey, happy day for everybody. So that's the news. Anybody have any questions in chat? I got more people here than I normally have. I stream LotRO on the official channel Fridays at noon. Occasionally, if Professor Corey is out, I will also take over part or all of his time slot. I also stream on the DDO channel Thursdays at 3 o'clock. Did I say Fridays at noon? I'm a freaking liar. Fridays at 3. Noon is Cordovan when he comes back to streaming, which Cordovan did say he's coming back to streaming. So we'll see if that actually happens. I think it will, because he still likes y'all. He's just a busy boy. So yeah. So I think if you have the chance to go to Cologne or Cologne, and can go to the player meetup. The player meetup is free. You just have to get there. So that's on your own dime. And you can talk to the dev team. And again, the dev team that are present. Unfortunately, Severlin did not go on the adventure. I don't know why. I don't know of any reason to worry about it. It's just plans change. And I believe Friendly Hat was also originally slated to go, but They switched out Friendly Hat for Pinion. Has any other MMO sold lower content as an expansion? Yeah. Most MMOs will sell you their old expansions. Some of them will do a model that actually LotRO just picked up, the notion of the entire game is free up to X point, and then you start paying. LotRO just picked that up, and a lot of other games like EverQuest does this. World of Warcraft even does this. Is when the new expansion comes out, the previous Final Fantasy does this too. That the previous expansion is included in the price, so if you buy the new expansion, you get all the old ones. So, yeah. No news or word on performance issues. I do know they are still working on it. Did they say where the mini expansion will be located? Yes, Apu. They mentioned the 2 names on the 2 maps that some stupid dumb fuck posted, broke NDA and posted from the Palantir test server. Those names they mentioned at the conference was Swanfleet and Cardolan. So now we can actually talk about them in those places that ask you not to talk about them, because many of us actually do respect NDAs. Plus the fact that I personally have to respect the NDA. I'm kind of under the, even though I don't work there, I got far enough in the interview process one time that they made me sign the employee NDA. So I kind of have to be a bitch about it. So I'm going to shout the news to wherever it needs to go. So, yes, Anathello, I believe your name is very deep blue like mine is, so I can't read it either. So, that's the news from the world of Lord of the Rings Online. I'm sure we're going to get more information. I would keep an eye out for Life Beyond the Shire, and B4, the LotRO streamers, also known as Little Redhead and 42 and B4. I'm sure they will have some news in their Discord, social media, whatnot, for anything they learn at Devcom, or at the player meetup. God, I'm Holly Berry! We did a Trixie to Holly. We did a Trixie to Holly. Because what we did is, it was recently Holly Berry's birthday, and I received a tell from Master Harper Aiden of the Lonely Mountain Band saying, hey, you wanna come play Happy Birthday for Holly's birthday? I'm like, I don't have the music. Here! I don't have an instrument. Here! So, yay! So, thank you all. And again, it would have been nice to have the panel available to the public, but unfortunately it is a professional conference that was behind a paywall. But I'm very grateful to the Devcom team for deciding to grant me press credentials so I could watch this and enjoy and bring the news to you all. I'm sure Cordovan has some scheduled social media about, with the key art and the logo and whatnot. If he doesn't, I'm going to call him names. Jerry, what the fuck are you doing, man? No, I'm sure he does. However, whether it publishes from Germany, I don't know. I don't know the status of Wi-Fi out there. So, pretty exciting day. We now know what to expect coming up soon. We just don't know the depths of it. So keep an eye on LotRO's social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, where Cordovan posts all of the things in the forums. And yeah, hopefully we'll get some dev diaries and some good stuff, and they'll publish those freaking maps. So I can't say I'm not allowed to talk about them because I'm not on Palantir, so I can't talk about it, but I'm still under the NDA, so I still can't talk about them. So, now I can talk at least about the names. The maps, I don't think I'm going to fight too much about it because, again, they were posted on Reddit, massively published them, so they're out there. Go look at the article. I think MMORPG also published something, unless they actually have some artistic integrity. So, by the way, if one of the people mentioned in the thing today, Professor Corey Olson, is going to be streaming like normal. Well, no, I lied. He's going to be streaming this weekend. He, lucky bastard, is going to the Rings of Power premiere party. And I believe John DiBartolo, Galen here of the Lonely Mountain Band, is going to be there. And Galen here is going to be releasing a new real-life album of music next month. So keep an ear out for that. So, thank you! Thank you for being here. Drop a follow to the channel if you want to listen to me be really hyper active. And listen to my cat meow. Now he's being quiet, of course. And yeah, I'm going to play the outro. And just while I've got 35 of you people here, if you listen to this outro, this band is been defunct for probably 20 years. However, the flute player is one Master Cordovan. So if you ever wanted to see Cordovan playing flute when he regularly practiced, here you go. So let's listen to the outro and drop a follow, hit the notifications to know when I go live. Unfortunately, I have a day job and a second job, so I don't get to stream as much as I would like to. But generally, Saturday night's a good night for fighting and for watching me play LotRO. I'm going to go take a I'm going to go edit the video, post it on YouTube, and take a damn nap because I haven't slept all night because I didn't want to miss the battle. Anyway, peace. Be good. If you can't be good at it. Yep. All right. Bye now.